The research ship Horizon's Edge floated quietly near Neptune. It was a small ship with a crew of only 12 people. Captain Kang Tae stood on the bridge and looked at the strange light on his screen. The light was coming from something they had never seen before. "What is that?" asked Lieutenant Yoon Hana. She stood next to the captain and watched the readings on her tablet. "I don't know," said Tae. "Right, but we need to find out." The ship moved closer to the light. As they approached, they saw something amazing. It was a ring made of metal and energy. The ring was huge, bigger than any building on Earth. Strange symbols covered its surface. The symbols glowed with a soft blue light. "It looks old," said Park Dae, the engineer. He had come up from the engine room to see what was happening. "Very old. Maybe thousands of years." Captain Tae thought for a moment. They had come to this part of space to study strange energy readings. Now they had found something that could change everything humans knew about the universe. He made a decision. "Take us closer," he ordered. The ship moved toward the ring. When they got within 100 meters, something happened. The ring started to glow brighter. The symbols moved and changed. A beam of light shot out from the ring and touched their ship.
"Captain,"
shouted Cho Mira from her communications station. "Something is pulling us in." The ship shook hard. Alarms started to ring. The crew held on to their seats as the Horizon's Edge was pulled into the center of the ring. There was a flash of bright white light. Everyone closed their eyes. When they opened their eyes again, everything had changed. The ship was no longer near Neptune. They were somewhere else entirely. The stars outside the windows were different. In front of them was a planet they had never seen before. It was purple and green with 3 moons circling around it, but that was not what made everyone stop breathing. Around their small ship were hundreds of other ships. These ships were massive. They were shaped like long triangles with weapons pointing in every direction. Each one was the size of a small city. And every single one of them was pointing at the Horizon's Edge. "How many ships?" asked Captain Tae. His voice was calm. Hannah looked at her screen. Her hands were steady as she counted. 312 ships, Captain. All of them are armed. All of them are aimed at us." The bridge was silent for a moment. Everyone looked at the captain. There were 12 humans in a small research ship. They had no weapons. They had no shields. They were surrounded by an alien armada that could destroy them in seconds. Captain Tae nodded slowly. Then he turned to the crew member standing near the door. "Lim Soo," he said to the medical officer. "Would you please make some tea for the bridge crew? I think we could all use something warm." Sue blinked once, then nodded and left to make the tea. Before anyone could say anything, the communications screen lit up. A face appeared on the screen. It was not a human face. The creature had gray skin and 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern. Its mouth was wide and filled with small, sharp teeth. Behind it, more aliens moved around a massive command center. "Unknown vessel," the alien said. Its voice was translated by the ship's computer. "You have entered Dominion space without permission. You are surrounded by the fleet of Admiral Rova. Surrender now, or you will be destroyed. You have 30 seconds to respond." Everyone on the bridge looked at Captain Tae. He straightened his uniform. He ran a hand through his hair to smooth it down. Then he pressed the button to respond to the transmission. "Hello?" he said in a friendly voice. "My name is Kang Tae. I am the captain of this vessel. We come from a planet called Earth. I think there might be some kind of misunderstanding here. We did not mean to enter your space. We were pulled through that ring behind us by accident." He paused and smiled politely at the alien on the screen. "Perhaps we could talk about this? I would very much like to understand what is happening." On the alien ship, Admiral Rova stared at her screen. She had conquered 12 civilizations. She had destroyed planets. She had made entire species surrender with just the sight of her fleet. Every species reacted the same way when they saw 300 Dominion warships. They screamed. They cried. They begged. They tried to run. They tried to fight. This creature was smiling at her. It was asking to talk. Scanned him again, Rova ordered her officers. "Check for weapons. Check for shields. Check for any hidden technology." Her officers ran the scans again and again. The results were the same every time, Admiral, said one of her officers. Their ship has no weapons, no shields. Their technology is primitive. They pose no threat to us. Rova watched the human captain on her screen. He was now accepting a cup of tea from another human. He took a small sip and nodded his thanks. He looked completely relaxed. Then why? Rova said slowly. Is he not afraid? She had no answer. And for the first time in her long career, Admiral Rova felt something cold move through her chest. She did not know what these humans were. But she knew one thing for certain. Something was very wrong. She ordered her fleet to hold their fire. She needed to understand these creatures before she did anything else. She needed to know why they could face death and drink tea. The human captain looked up at the screen and raised his cup slightly in a small greeting gesture. Rova did not sleep well that night. The humans were brought to the Dominion flagship one by one. Soldiers in heavy armor surrounded them as they walked through the long metal hallways. The ship was cold and dark. Strange sounds echoed from distant parts of the vessel. Captain Tay walked calmly between his guards. He looked around at everything with quiet interest. When they passed a window that showed the stars outside, he stopped for a moment to admire the view.
Ow.
Move, growled one of the guards. Of course, said Tay politely. I was just looking. It is very beautiful out there. The guard did not know how to respond to this. He pushed Tay forward and said nothing more. The crew was separated and taken to different rooms. Each room was designed to make prisoners feel small and scared. The walls were high and dark. The lights were bright and pointed directly at the prisoner's face. The chairs were uncomfortable and cold. Lieutenant Yoon Hannah sat in her chair and waited. She had been alone in the room for 3 hours now. She knew this was part of the process. They wanted her to feel afraid. They wanted her to imagine terrible things. They wanted her mind to break before the questioning even began. Hannah thought about what she would have. For dinner, when this was over, she hoped the aliens had something good to eat. She was getting quite hungry. The door finally opened. 3 aliens walked in. The one in the middle was tall and had blue skin. She wore a uniform covered in medals. Her 4 eyes studied Hannah with cold interest. "I'm Senior Interrogator Vel," the alien said. "You will tell me everything about your species. You will tell me about your weapons. You will tell me about your fleet. If you lie to me, I will know. If you refuse to speak, you will suffer." Hannah nodded. "I understand. I will answer your questions as best I can." Vel had expected crying. She had expected begging. She had expected silence or anger. She had not expected calm agreement. "Let us begin," Vel said slowly. "Your ship came through the ancient gateway. How did you activate it?" "We did not activate it," said Hannah. "We were studying it, and it pulled us through. We do not know how it works." "How many ships does your species have?" "I do not know the exact number. Maybe a few hundred. Most of them are for research or transport. We do not have many military ships." Vel leaned forward. "Your civilization has only a few hundred ships?" "Yes, we have only been traveling in space for about 200 years. We are quite new at this." Vel and her assistants exchanged looks. This made no sense. A primitive species with few ships should be terrified. They should be on their knees begging for mercy. But this human female sat there like she was having a normal conversation in another room. Park Day was shown images of destroyed planets. The aliens played recordings of cities burning and people screaming. They showed him footage of species that had fought against the Dominion and lost everything. "This is what happens to those who resist," the interrogator told him. "Your world could be next. Your family, your friends, everyone you have ever known burned to ash." Day watched the images. He was quiet for a long moment. "That is very sad," he said finally. "Those poor people. Is there any way to help the survivors? Do they need food or medicine?" The interrogator stared at him. "You do not understand? This is what we will do to your planet if you do not cooperate." "Oh, I understood," said Day. "I just wanted to know about the survivors first. But to answer your question, I will cooperate. I have nothing to hide. What do you want to know?" The interrogator felt a headache forming behind her eyes. Communications specialist Cho Mira faced a different approach. Her interrogators tried to be friendly. They offered her food and water. They spoke softly and told her they only wanted to understand humans better. Mira accepted the food gratefully. It tasted strange, but not bad. "Tell us about Earth," they said. "Tell us about your weapons. Tell us about your leaders." Mira told them about Earth. She talked about the oceans and mountains. She described different countries and cultures. She explained how humans governed themselves. The interrogators listened carefully. "In your military power?" one asked. "We have armies and navies," said Mira. "We have some nuclear weapons." "Nothing compared to what you have, I imagine. Your ships are very impressive." The interrogators could not believe what they were hearing. This human was openly admitting weakness. She was practically telling them that Earth had no real defense. And yet she sat there, eating their food and chatting like they were old friends. "Are you not afraid of what we might do to your planet?" one interrogator asked. Mira thought about this. "I suppose I should be. But being afraid would not change anything, would it? If you decide to attack Earth, worrying about it now will not stop you. So I prefer to focus on what I can do, which is answer your questions honestly and hope we can become friends." The interrogators ended the session early. They needed time to think. By the end of the day, reports from all the interrogation rooms said the same thing. The humans showed no fear. Their hearts beat at normal speed. Their voices did not shake. They answered questions honestly and openly. They admitted they were weak. They admitted they had no way to fight back. And somehow, this made them even more disturbing. Admiral Rova read all the reports in her private office. Her four eyes moved quickly over the words. When she finished, she set the reports down and stared at the wall. "What are you?" she whispered to herself. She remembered an old story her grandmother had told her when she was young. A story about a creature that could not be scared. A creature that walked through fire without screaming. A creature that faced death with a smile. The creature in the story was always the monster. Rova ordered the humans to be given food and comfortable rooms. She told her officers to treat them well. Not because she was kind, but because she was afraid of what might happen. If they made these strange creatures angry, she would bring them before the High Council tomorrow. Let the counselors figure out what these humans really were. Rova had conquered worlds. These 12 calm humans frightened her more than all of them combined. The High Council of the Dominion met in a great hall at the center of the capital planet. The hall was enormous. 1,000 people could stand inside and still have room to move. The ceiling was so high that clouds sometimes formed near the top. Great pillars of black stone held everything in place. 12 counselors sat in a half circle on raised platforms. Each one represented a different part of the Dominion. They had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. They had seen species rise and fall. They had watched empires crumble to dust. Nothing surprised them anymore until now. Admiral Rova stood before them. Her voice echoed through the great hall as she gave her report. She told them about the ancient gateway activating. She told them about the small human ship appearing in Dominion space. She told them about the 300 warships that had surrounded the humans. And she told them about the humans' response. "They showed no fear," Rova said. "Not one of them. We separated them. We interrogated them. We showed them images of destroyed worlds. We threatened their planet. Nothing worked. They remained calm through all of it." Counselor Thren was the oldest member of the council. His gray skin had turned almost white with age. He had seen more years than anyone else in the hall. His voice was thin and weak, but everyone listened when he spoke. "Tell me again about their technology," Thren said. "Primitive," Rova replied. "Their ship has no weapons, no shields. Their engines are slow. Their sensors are basic. They could not fight against even our smallest patrol craft. A small world called Earth. They have only been in space for 200 years. They have a few hundred ships, mostly for research and transport. No significant military presence beyond their own system."
How the counselors whispered among themselves.
This made no sense. A weak species should be afraid of the Dominion. That was how the universe worked. The strong ruled, the weak feared. It had always been this way. Counselor Nira spoke next. She was younger than the others and known for her aggressive views. Perhaps they are simply stupid. Perhaps they do not understand their situation. Rova shook her head. No, they understand. They openly admitted that they cannot fight us. They know they would lose. They simply do not seem to care. Impossible, said another counselor. Fear is a survival response. All living things feel it. It is written into the very nature of life. Perhaps not all living things, said Thren slowly. Everyone turned to look at him. The old counselor's eyes were distant, as if he was looking at something far away in time. What do you mean? Asked Nira. Thren was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke. There are stories in our oldest records. Stories from before the Dominion existed. Stories about a species called the Quiet Ones. The name sent a whisper through the hall. Even the youngest counselors had heard of the Quiet Ones. They were legends. Myths. The monsters that parents used to scare their children. The Quiet Ones could not feel fear, Thren continued. They walked through fire without screaming. They faced death without flinching. They destroyed empires not with weapons, but with patience. They simply waited until their enemies made mistakes. They never panicked. They never ran. They never surrendered. And in the end, they always won. Quiet Ones are a myth, said Nira. Stories to frighten children, are they? Thren looked at her with his ancient eyes. The Dominion has records going back 10,000 years. Before us, there were other empires. Great civilizations that ruled the stars. Where are they now? Gone, destroyed. By what? We do not know. But the stories all say the same thing. The Quiet Ones came. The Quiet Ones waited. The Quiet Ones won. The hall was silent. Admiral Rova spoke carefully. You think these humans are the Quiet Ones? I think we should not act without thinking, said Thren. If they are the Quiet Ones, or their descendants, we could be making a terrible mistake. If they are not, then we lose nothing by being careful. Nira stood up from her platform. This is foolish. They are primitives with no weapons. We should destroy their planet now, before they become a threat. One fleet could burn their world in a single day, if they are what I fear. Thren asked. What if destroying their planet brings their true fleet out of hiding? What if they have been waiting for us to attack first? What if this small ship and these calm humans are just bait? Nira had no answer. The debate continued for hours. Some counselors wanted to destroy Earth immediately. Others wanted to wait and watch. A few suggested trying to make friends with the humans. No one could agree. Finally, a message arrived. Captain Kong Tae had requested permission to speak before the council. He wanted to explain something. He wanted to help them understand. The counselors argued about this too. Was it a trap? Was it a trick? What could a primitive human possibly say that would matter? In the end, Thren convinced them to allow it. Let him speak, the old counselor said. Let us see what these humans have to say. Perhaps the truth is simpler than we think, or perhaps it is more frightening. Orders were sent to bring the humans to the Great Hall. Guards were doubled. Weapons were hidden in the walls. If the humans tried anything, they would be killed in an instant. Admiral Rova watched the preparations with growing unease. She had fought in 100 battles. She had never felt like this before. She was not afraid of the humans' power. She was afraid of their calm. Tomorrow, the humans would stand before the High Council. Tomorrow, perhaps, they would finally learn the truth. Rova hoped the truth would not be as terrifying as she feared, Captain. Kong Tae walked into the Great Hall with his crew behind him. They had been given clean clothes and good food. They had been allowed to rest. Now they stood before the rulers of a galactic empire, surrounded by hidden weapons and hundreds of guards. Tae looked around the hall with quiet interest. He noticed the high ceiling and the great pillars. He saw the 12 counselors on their raised platforms. He felt the tension in the air like a physical weight. He was not afraid. Captain Kong Tae of Earth, said Counselor Thren. His old voice filled the hall. You asked to speak before this council. You said you wanted to help us understand. We have allowed this. Speak now. Tay nodded and stepped forward. He did not bow. He did not kneel. He simply stood and faced the counselors as an equal. Thank you for this chance to speak, he said. I know you have many questions. I know you are worried about us. I want to explain who we are and why we are the way we are. Counselor Nira leaned forward. We know who you are. You are a primitive species with no power and no defense. What we do not understand is why you do not fear us. That is exactly what I want to explain, said Tay. He paused and thought about how to begin. The fate of his species might depend on his next words. He needed to make them understand. We are not powerful, he said finally. You are right about that. Our technology is primitive. Our ships are few. If you attacked our planet, we could not stop you. We know this. We have known it since we first saw your fleet. Then why do you not surrender? Why do you not beg for mercy? Nira asked. Tay smiled slightly. Because we come from a world that has been trying to kill us since the beginning. The counselors looked at each other in confusion. Tay continued. Earth is a difficult place to live. We have storms that can destroy entire cities. We have earthquakes that split the ground open. We have volcanoes that bury whole regions in fire and ash. We have diseases that have killed millions of our people in single years. He paced slowly as he spoke. And that is just nature. We have also spent most of our history fighting each other. War after war after war. We have come close to destroying ourselves many times. We have weapons that could burn our entire planet. We have made mistakes that poisoned our water and air. We have almost gone extinct more than once. Lieutenant Yunhana stepped forward to speak. What the captain is saying is that we have lived with death as our constant neighbor. Every generation of humans has faced something that could end everything. Ice ages, plagues, asteroids. We are still here because we learned to keep going, even when we were afraid. Medical Officer Lim Su added her own words. I study the human body. Our brains are built to handle extreme stress. When danger comes, we can push our fear to the side and focus on what needs to be done. It is not that we do not feel fear. We feel it deeply. But we have learned to not let it control us. The counselors listened in silence. Admiral Rova stood near the back of the hall, watching carefully. Let me tell you a story, said Tay. About 200 years ago, there was a war on our planet. One of the worst we have ever seen. Millions of people died. Cities were destroyed. It seemed like the end of everything. He looked directly at the counselors. During that war, there was a city called London. The enemy was dropping bombs on it every night. Buildings burned. People died. The survivors had to live underground to stay safe. They could be killed at any moment. What did they do? Asked Thren. The old counselor was listening with great interest. They kept going, said Tay. They went to work. They raised their children. They drank tea and made jokes and helped their neighbors. Not because they were not afraid. They were terrified. But they understood that giving in to fear would not stop the bombs. It would only make their lives worse. He paused. We call this strength. Some people call it stubbornness. Whatever you call it, it is who we are. We face our problems calmly because panic does not help. We have learned this lesson through thousands of years of suffering. Park Day, the engineer, spoke up. You showed me images of destroyed worlds. You wanted me to be scared. But I have seen similar images from our own history. Our own species has done terrible things to each other. We know what destruction looks like. It is sad and horrible, but it is not new to us. Cho Myra, the communications specialist, nodded. When you threatened us, you expected us to break. But we have been threatened by death since the day we evolved. Our planet is dangerous. Our history is violent. We are survivors. That is all. The hall was completely silent. The counselors stared at the small group of humans standing before them. Finally, Thren spoke. His old voice was barely a whisper. You are not gods. You are not the quiet ones from our legends. You are simply survivors. Yes, said Tay. We are survivors. Nothing more, nothing less. Thren leaned back in his seat. His four ancient eyes studied the humans with something new in them. It might have been respect. It might have been pity. It might have been fear. Species forged by hardship, the old counselor said slowly. A species that has stared into the void so many times that you no longer flinch when it stares back. He looked at his fellow counselors. In some ways, that is more frightening than any weapon. They cannot be intimidated because they have already faced everything we could threaten them with. They have faced it on their own world, from their own kind, and they are still here. Admiral Rova understood now. She understood completely. These humans were not powerful. They were not secretly advanced. They had no hidden fleet. They were exactly what they appeared to be, and that was what made them terrifying. They were survivors, and survivors were very hard to kill. The Council's decision came 3 days after Captain Tay's speech. 3 days of arguments and debates. 3 days of counselors shouting at each other while the humans waited in their comfortable rooms. 3 days of Admiral Rova pacing her quarters and thinking about everything she had learned. In the end, the vote was close. 7 counselors voted to release the humans and begin peaceful relations. 5 voted to destroy Earth while they still could. Counselor Thren's vote decided everything. The old counselor voted for peace. I have lived a long time, Thren told the others. I have seen many species come and go. The ones who survive are not always the strongest. They are the ones who adapt. These humans have been adapting since their world first tried to kill them. They will keep adapting. Better to have them as friends than enemies. The news was delivered to Captain Tay by Admiral Rova herself. She came to his room alone, without guards. She stood in the doorway and looked at him for a long moment before speaking. Da-da-da-da. The Council has decided to release you and your crew, she said. Your ship will be returned. You may go home. Thank you. I am glad we could reach an understanding. It is not all, Rova continued. The Dominion wishes to establish diplomatic relations with Earth. We will share star maps with you. We will teach you basic galactic technology. In exchange, we ask only for peace and cultural exchange. We accept, said Tay without hesitation. Humanity has much to learn, and perhaps we have something to teach as well. Rova almost smiled at that. Almost. The next few days were busy. The human crew was given access to Dominion databases. They learned about the thousands of species in the galaxy. They learned about the history of the Dominion. They learned about the ancient gateways and how to use them safely. Lieutenant Hannah spent hours in the Dominion library, reading everything she could find. She was particularly interested in the story of the Quiet Ones. When she asked about them, the librarian seemed nervous. They are just legends, one librarian told her. Stories from long ago. No one knows if they were real, but everyone seems afraid of them, Hannah observed. The librarian looked around to make sure no one else was listening. The Quiet Ones destroyed entire empires. Not with weapons. With patience, they would arrive somewhere new, and they would watch. They would learn. They would wait. And eventually, their enemies would make a mistake. The Quiet Ones never made mistakes. They were too calm, too patient. It drove their enemies mad. Hannah thought about this for a long time. On the day they were to leave, Admiral Rova came to the docking bay, where the Horizon's Edge was waiting. The small human ship looked even more primitive next to the massive Dominion vessels. But it had brought them this far. It would take them home. Captain Tay stood outside the ship with his crew. They had all been changed by this experience. They had met aliens, been interrogated, stood before the rulers of a galactic empire, and somehow survived. More than survived. They had earned respect. Rova approached Tay. The alien admiral towered over the human captain. Her 4 eyes looked down at him with an expression that was hard to read. I have a question, she said. One final question before you go. Ask it, said Tay. Rova chose her words carefully. When you first saw my fleet, 300 warships, all of them pointed at your tiny vessel. You had no weapons, no shields, no way to escape. If we had fired, you would have died in an instant. I want to know what you would have done. If we had attacked... Tay was quiet for a moment. He looked up at the alien admiral and answered honestly. We would have died, he said simply. But we would have died trying to survive. We would have tried to run, to hide, to fight back with whatever we had. We would have used every tool, every trick, every idea we could think of. That is what humans do. We do not give up. Even when there is no hope, we keep trying. Rova stared at him. Why? What is the point of fighting when you cannot win? Tay smiled. Because sometimes you win anyway. Our history is full of impossible victories. Small forces defeating large armies. Weak people overcoming powerful enemies. We have a saying on Earth, it is not over until it is over. We have seen too many surprises to ever assume we know how something will end. The Admiral was silent for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer than before. That is precisely what frightens us, she said. You do not fear death. You negotiate with it. You bargain with it. You find loopholes in the rules of the universe. I have conquered 12 civilizations. None of them scared me like you do. She stepped back and gave a formal salute. Go home, Captain Kongte. Tell your people what you have found. Tell them about the Dominion. Tell them about the galaxy that awaits them. And tell them to remain exactly as they are. Your calm is your greatest weapon. Tay returned the salute. Thank you, Admiral. I hope we will meet again under peaceful circumstances. I hope so too, said Rova. But I suspect that even in war, you would still offer me tea. Tay laughed at that. It was a genuine laugh, warm and human. The sound echoed through the docking bay. Several aliens nearby stopped what they were doing to stare. The crew boarded their ship. The engines came to life. The small human vessel lifted off and flew toward the ancient gateway that would take them home. Admiral Rova watched them go. When the ship had disappeared through the gateway, she returned to her flagship. She had a report to write. She had to explain to the Dominion what these humans were and why they should never be underestimated. She sat at her desk for an hour, trying to find the right words. Finally, she wrote just one note in the official file on humanity. Handle with extreme caution. They do not fear death. They negotiate with it. Far away, through the gateway, the horizon's edge emerged near Neptune. The crew looked at their home star in the distance. Earth was out there, small and blue, waiting for them. They had left as scientists exploring an anomaly. They were returning as ambassadors for their entire species. Captain. Tay looked out at the stars and thought about everything that had happened. Humanity was about to step onto the galactic stage. They were small and weak and primitive by galactic standards. But they had something that the great empires of the galaxy did not. Understand? They had survived everything their universe had thrown at them. They would survive this too. And somewhere in the back of his mind, Tay smiled at a thought he would never say out loud. The galaxy was afraid of the wrong things. It was afraid of power and weapons and technology. But the thing that truly mattered was the will to keep going no matter what. Humanity had that, in abundance. The galaxy was not ready for them.